Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our next panel, Unleashing Wireless Innovation and Deployment Through Deregulation. This panel builds on the important spectrum discussion earlier today. As the wireless industry works to implement America's renewed spectrum roadmap, it's important to put that spectrum to use as quickly as possible. As Chairman Carr declared, it is time to build. This discussion will focus on agency efforts to remove regulations that stand in the way of wireless investment, innovation, and infrastructure deployment in the US. And I am absolutely thrilled to welcome this incredible group of women in wireless panelists to the stage this afternoon. I am joined by Anisa Green, Director of Federal Regulatory and Chief of Staff at AT&T. Going down the line, we have Holly Henderson, External Affairs and Compliance Director at Southern Linc. Next up is Jennifer Schneider, Head of the DC Office of American Tower. And we also have Melanie Tiano, Director of Federal Regulatory Affairs at T-Mobile. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's start off with one of the Commission's signature policy initiatives this year, and that's the Chairman's Build America agenda. So Chairman Carr launched the agenda earlier this summer and identified some key areas where Commission action will spur deployment, create jobs, increase competition, and continue to lower prices for consumers. As part of that agenda, the Chairman has outlined several priorities. Those include cutting red tape that can inhibit broadband deployment, deleting rules that are unnecessary, unlawful, and costly, and promoting policies that ensure US leadership in secure and resilient technologies from 5G to AI and beyond. These priorities are consistent with the administration's broader efforts to promote investment and deployment and to promote government efficiency. I'm going to open up the first question to all of you, and I would love to hear from you which parts of the agenda will have the most impact as your companies plan for continued investment and innovation. Let's go down the line. I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, they tell me to keep my voice so that everyone in the room can hear me. I'm a very loud girl, so I'm going to bring it down just a smidge because the room is small. But thank you very much for having me on the panel this afternoon. We're very excited about the parts of the agenda that promote investment and innovation. And from that perspective, the items focused on furthering high-speed infrastructure and wireless deployments are particularly impactful. Our focus is on leading the build-out of modern networks, and you heard my colleague talk about this in the last panel, her golden 5G tagline. But we are very excited about giving Americans the connectivity they need to thrive in the digital world today. And so the FCC's Build America agenda is encouraging and will hopefully accelerate the build-out of modernized wireline and wireless infrastructure nationwide.
Thanks for that, Anisa. Let's continue on down.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and be a part of this discussion today and talk about deregulation and the Build America agenda. So thanks to CTIA, Amy, for pulling this panel together. We always welcome the idea of less regulation, and we've been following a lot of the FCC activities and certainly tried to give feedback along the way in the sort of general deregulatory theme. I just want to mention three things that we're particularly thinking about right now in the context of Build America and what we can do to deploy additional infrastructure. We're kind of intrigued with this upcoming wireline item that's on the horizon. As we think about networks, we talk about wireless networks and we're the wireless industry, but there's a lot of wires in that network. And as we think about our own network and the importance of reliability, resiliency, and security to our customers, controlling all aspects and maintaining all aspects of that network has become increasingly important, including the fiber pieces. So we're really interested to see what that item might do to help us as we deploy additional fiber to support the wireless operations. We're, of course, very interested, and we heard the whole panel discussion about spectrum. So I'll just add to that from a small carrier perspective. As the commission brings spectrum to auction, how can we structure them in a way that small providers who are serving a lot of rural parts of the U.S. have an opportunity to compete for spectrum and acquire it and deploy it in our networks in a way that facilitates additional broadband services and brings and maintains competition in those areas. And then just as a third piece, we're very interested in cybersecurity. And so as the commission looks at ways to ensure that equipment and networks are trusted and secured, we're very eager to see how that can be helpful to us. And we feel that's kind of with equipment, kind of a little bit of a whack-a-mole exercise as we try to keep out unsecure and untrustworthy equipment. So if there are ways that the commission can help in that, we certainly welcome it.
Great. Jennifer.
Hi. Oh, well, thank you first to you, Amy, and to CTIA for including me and considering American Tower as part of this panel. We are wireless infrastructure. We have the towers, so I will probably associate myself with all of the other panelists as they are our tenants on our towers. In terms of the agenda, well, first of all, we are grateful for the steps that the FCC and Congress have already taken in encouraging deployment of wireless networks and infrastructure. With, I think, Chairman Carr's agenda, the Build America agenda is extremely broad and very bold. And certainly we are grateful for the wireless related items and are interested in several of the proceedings that I am sure we will be talking about shortly.
Melanie.
Yes, and thank you, Amy and CTIA. It's been a minute since I've been on the CTIA stage, and I'm really excited to be back, so thank you for including me. Obviously, the chairman's goals of freeing up additional spectrum will be hugely impactful. We just heard from all of our experts on the last panel, so I won't, belabor the point, but, spectrum, especially mid-band spectrum, is necessary for the wireless industry to be able to serve their customers and to give customers the services that they need. Additionally, the Commission's efforts to unleash infrastructure builds will be significant. Every time we cut regulatory red tape, we speed up deployments, we open the door to new innovation, and we strengthen America's leadership, and not just in 5G anymore, but in the race to 6G and in the technologies that will follow.
Thank you all so much for that. The chairman really opened the door to investment and innovation, and it's great to hear all of these ideas that you all already have to get moving to make that happen. So thank you for that. Let's turn to another aspect of the Build America agenda, and that's the delete, delete, delete proceeding. We appreciate that one of the Build America agenda priorities is cutting red tape. You'll hear that a lot today. The delete proceeding has already generated a robust record of more than 1,200 filings that demonstrate how regulations can be reduced to create efficiencies without harming consumers. The FCC's already started to act on several direct final rules to achieve this goal, and in fact, later this month, the Commission is going to consider another item that tees up nearly 400 wireless rules. So I'd like to hear from you all again. This is a couple parts to this question. Which FCC regulations have your companies identified that currently impose the most significant unnecessary compliance or administrative burdens? And what are you most excited about as the FCC moves forward with deregulation? Let's go on down the line again.
Yeah, it was like Christmas in April, I think, for many of us. We got to submit our lists early. We are waiting for our reward, and we're all assuming a good position in 2025. So we have been on our best behavior. And yes, we are excited. I don't want to spend a lot of time on what has been burdensome. I think you guys can see the record. We had a long list through our trade associations. And so I think to spare some couple of minutes this afternoon, I think we are very excited about what is to come and what the FCC has started to do. It's been over 30 years since the COMM Act was enacted, and there's a lot that has happened in that time, and the rules are not quite aligning. So taking a first stab at outdated and obsolete rules was very smart. I know that they're competing a little bit on the Doge meter, but I think it has been extremely helpful to get those out of the way. We have seen opening proceedings, and I know we're going to spend some time talking about it, the wireless and wireline infrastructure items, pole attachments, NEPA, NEPA, NEHA, I don't know all the proper pronunciation, spectrum. We are very excited about that. We think the FCC has taken on a Herculean effort here, and we're here to support it.
Fantastic.
We've been very pleased with a lot of deregulatory activity in tone, and as Anisa said, have watched as the Commission has identified different regulations that could be eliminated along the way. And I'll just say maybe our hope is, this is all kind of looking behind us, things that we have done in the past, that were done in the past, that we also carry this forward as we proceed, and that we continue to see a deregulatory emphasis in rulemakings and sort of a minimalist rulemaking. And then along the way, we've been very vocal, I think, in a lot of proceedings about the regulatory burden that small providers face. And we may ask for additional time to comply. We may ask for maybe a little different leeway to get to a compliance goal. But we ask for that for a reason, because of the burden and the complexity that a lot of the regulations require in order to implement and comply. And we would hope that we can continue to have that dialogue, and maybe that will resonate with the current Commission as it thinks about a deregulatory approach.
Thank you.
We are excited about Chairman Carr right-sizing the rules going forward. It's amazing how laser-focused he is on this, counting the rules and the lines and the letter, I guess it's the words, of what's being removed from CFR. The last number I saw was like over 800 rules, 70,000 words. It's a lot, and it's a lot to count. We certainly support our association's comments in the proceeding, CTIA, and also WIA, the Wireless Infrastructure Association, which represents towers. And we support a lot of the proposals out there. We also know that the FCC has been very deliberate in adopting rules over the past at least couple of decades since I've been working with the FCC. So there are rules that we want to keep in place. Mind you, I think we were joking about this last night, that this is kind of like cleaning out your junk drawer in your kitchen. And so I think it's great. Probably those first 800 rules were really for outdated or unnecessary requirements that we don't need, like you and I probably worked on 15 years ago at the FCC. So, but going forward, we're watching how the FCC will approach, or at least we're watching that some of these rules are maintained. So, for example, we are very excited about Section 6409A, which is provision that Congress passed in 2012 in the Spectrum Act that is meant to encourage and expedite infrastructure deployment, particularly on existing towers. And the FCC has worked very hard to very carefully implement rules that support that deployment, the speedy deployment, and streamlining. And we certainly would want to make sure that those stay in place. I started in 2012, so it's about 10-ish years ago, and then 2018 through 2020, there were additional orders adopting rules that we think provided more clarity. And so, again, we just hope that those stick around and ensure that we can deploy quickly going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, we echo what we've heard here. Thank you to CTIA for your comments. We appreciate the Commission's leadership in streamlining and modernizing a lot of their regulations, right? It's time to update many of these outdated processes and provide greater efficiency to the FCC's rules. I mean, I won't go and do a line by line. I think we're going to cover a few of them, in a little more detail. NEPA, for example, and thanks again to Amy and CTIA for kicking off that important review. So I think we'll just sort of pepper in as we continue the discussion on those that are the most impactful at this point.
Yeah, well, that was a great table setting. A lot of good themes here. We've made a list. We got to check it twice because some of those rules do remain important, but it is important to clear out the regulatory underbrush, the red tape, and be mindful going forward that we don't fall into the same trap of creating unnecessary regulations that will persist into the future. So let's dive in a little deeper. I'll stick with you, Anisa, for a minute. You talked about cutting rules from the CFR, the word count, but in some cases, there are proposals that could significantly reduce costs that require rule revisions or sometimes even new rules to achieve the desired deregulatory effect. Do you see any rules that fall into that category?
Yeah, and we've seen some of them already. Clearly, the FCC's exploration of wireless and wireline infrastructure, looking at rules, how to remove barriers. We need strong legal footing if we're going to start eliminating, modifying rules. You're seeing the broadband labels. The draft item is, we're happy with it. And can I say that out loud? Yes, we're happy with the draft item. And so you're going to see that while the labels was on a wish list, yeah, we need some evaluation of modifying those rules. And then, of course, the NEPA item. I think we can also anticipate evaluation of USF program rules. They would need some type of rulemaking exploration, outdated roaming rules. I don't know that they can use the direct rule approach to those, and reforming enforcement procedures. You probably will see some that fall in that category of needing additional rulemakings to explore how to make them more efficient.
Yeah, so there's more to success than simply taking away words from the CFR. Now, Holly, I'd want to follow up on some of the comments you were making from the perspective of a small provider. The accumulation of rules and compliance costs across proceedings can be particularly burdensome for smaller providers. Are there steps the Commission can take to maximize the benefits of deregulation for companies like yours?
Yeah. I'll just sort of continue the comments I was making a moment ago. When we engage with our associations as well as individual companies with the Commission on rulemaking, and when we tell the Commission what it takes for us as small companies with smaller resources and smaller teams to accomplish what they're putting in front of us, we really would hope that they listen to us. We have fewer people. We have fewer people who do the engineering, who touch our information and billing systems, who deal with customer service, who do our communications pieces, whether it's website or wherever we need to be communicating that fall under the Commission's regulations. And it's not as easy as it might seem to just go make something happen. So again, as the Commission thinks about additional rules or maybe even changing and hopefully making a little less onerous some existing rules that do need to remain in place, if that turns into compliance obligations and additional steps to be taken, that the Commission really takes into account what we're telling them. And if we're seeking additional time or we're seeking we don't have the ability, for example, to really influence vendors. The vendors, sometimes make us feel like, well, we're lucky that they're working with us, quite frankly. And so that makes it harder for us to get to an endpoint that the Commission has put in front of us. So when we tell them that, we really ask that they listen to us and take that into account and build a set of regulations that we can accommodate while we're continuing to serve our customers and to bring them updated products, service lines, improve service, whatever it is we're trying to accomplish as a business with the customers, as we're also trying to meet our compliance obligations.
Thank you for that. So we will turn to a topic now that has come up a bit in your responses so far, and that is infrastructure reform. So another central element of the Chairman's Build America agenda and his deregulatory push is removing red tape that gets in the way of broadband deployment. Fortunately, Chairman Carr has been a champion of these efforts for years, and we've seen it work. The FCC's previous reforms enabled rapid and efficient rollout of 5G and have helped bridge the digital divide, including with 5G home broadband services. Now, the FCC is moving forward on a couple of fronts. Why don't we start with the effort to align outdated environmental and historic preservation requirements, otherwise known as NEPA and NIPA, with changes in the legal landscape. So I'm going to turn first to Jennifer and then Holly. How do the FCC's current NEPA and NIPA regulations impact your company's investment decisions, both for new deployment as well as upgrades? And what are the next steps you're hoping to see from the Commission?
Well, American Tower has been doing this for 30 years, and we've been mindful of NEPA and NIPA, and we comply. But it can be burdensome, a burdensome process. I will say that the FCC has been deliberate in moving forward with relatively workable rules and working with stakeholders in putting together national program agreements. So it's very positive, or it can be positive, but it's work. And so there are things that can be adjusted. And I have a few in mind that I thought I'd mention. We really like what the FCC proposes in the NPRM on floodplains, which we like to say is a common sense solution. In fact, we like to hope that most of these will be common sense solutions. And a mantra that we, and I know our Wireless Infrastructure Association is using, is predictable, proportionate, and transparent, which I think will be helpful moving forward. So in terms of floodplains, the FCC, or the NPRM proposes the FCC change how it reviews floodplains, and rather than requiring the whole structure be lifted to address floodplain issues, that the requirements will just shift to equipment, antennas, electrical facilities, all the parts. The towers are very hard to elevate, and we have buildings of engineers working on making sure the towers are resilient and can withstand all kinds of weather. So we think this is a common sense solution that will save money, and we'll be able to move forward much more easily with deployment. A process fix that could work through NEPA is just, or NIPA, there's a requirement for notification with local publication. Local newspapers, we all get our news differently now. And so local papers and publication can be hard to do and hard to comply with. So maybe that's something that can be eliminated or adjusted. And then a fix that we would love to see as part of this is addressing the issue of what we call twilight towers. There are thousands of towers that exist, they're up, but we can't have any co-location right now because there was a blip in regulation and requirements between 2001 and 2004. And as a result, we can't show that they actually comply with the NIPA requirements. And so tenants are hesitant to deploy on those towers. And these are thousands of towers that are out there ready to go. So if the FCC can address that issue and we can move forward, hopefully with determining that those towers are compliant, then there would be some quick deployment on thousands of towers, which again, that's a great way to streamline and move forward with additional deployments, which you all need, right? Mm.
Thanks for those suggestions. Holly, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I'll just say, in general, I don't think the public realizes how hard it is to build a site. And so when you're trying to adjust customer needs in terms of either closing a coverage hole or additional capacity, it's not easy to do. So we do welcome anything that the Commission can do to help make that process move along more smoothly. I mean, the siting, the environmental regs are just a piece of it. It's a multi-stage, very complicated process, but we welcome this effort and look forward to, we're not planning and we aren't doing huge site build-outs. We kind of did that with the network conversion several years back, but we do build some sites each year. So any process improvements that save time or save money, you know, we're a small company. We count small dollars as a big victory, so we welcome that.
Thank you. So Melanie, Anisa, anything you want to add about how the FCC's rule changes could affect your plans for growth and innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret, right, that these review requirements impose costly burdens. And, you know, we, like all carriers, have finite deployment budgets. And so the current rules are directly taking funds that could be used to build and putting them towards, you know, these regulatory reviews. So we welcome the opportunity for them to update these a little bit.
Yeah, and absolutely. Refining and expediting a NEPA review definitely saves money and time and effort, and we're very excited about. I think I heard recently NTIA expedited NEPA reviews to about 2 weeks, which is quicker than the typical timeline, and we welcome that move because of these reasons.
Absolutely. When we were talking to you all planning for this year, we consistently heard NEPA and NIPA as a pain point, and early in the year, we filed a petition for rulemaking trying to narrow the scope of NEPA and NIPA reviews and ensure that where those reviews remain, that they involve reasonable processes and timelines. So we were just thrilled that the FCC has moved on that rulemaking, and we hope when they reopen, it'll be full steam ahead again. These are great ideas. Thank you so much. We'll now turn to another aspect of infrastructure reform, and that is state and local siting. Just over 7 years ago, the FCC adopted landmark reforms enabling efficient small cell deployment, common sense guardrails and shot clocks that dramatically enhanced wireless siting processes. We're talking about a 110% increase in the number of small cells. Now the FCC is taking a fresh look at enhancing and extending these reforms to more wireless facilities. So Anisa, I'll start with you again. How have the FCC's actions to provide guidance and guardrails around state and local review of small cell deployments affected your company's ability to deploy? And what should the FCC be thinking about as it considers expanding those efforts to more wireless facilities?
Yeah, so you heard in the prior panel that Americans are using data, right? 132 terabytes maybe, or something. And that's an increase, a lot. Just in 2024, who knows what 2025 is looking like? I'm sure it's increased just in my house alone with Roblox. Demand for data and broadband infrastructure is increasing, so it is important than ever to streamline permitting processes to expand and upgrade to the latest communications infrastructure. The FCC's actions to reform state and local review processes have made permitting more predictable and efficient, both for providers and municipalities. These reforms have resulted in 110% growth in small cells since 2018. So despite the FCC's reforms, siting processes remain lengthy and complex and costly in many communities. And so the FCC should recognize that a clear application and permitting window helps all parties. Smart reforms mean municipalities and providers do not need to waste time or valuable human resources on drawn-out application processes.
Common sense indeed. So Jennifer and Melanie, let's focus on another aspect of that. Anisa was talking about reforms under sections 332 and 253. To throw in some additional numbers, we also want to talk about section 6409, which has been widely successful in facilitating co-location of wireless facilities, enhancing the ability of providers to meet consumer and enterprise demands by leveraging and upgrading existing infrastructure. What goals should the FCC be considering as it takes a fresh look at implementing the statute? Jennifer, why don't I start with you first?
Well, I mentioned we love 6409A and what the FCC has done to implement it. And you mentioned 7 years ago, a handful of orders that then Commissioner Carr led to further enable co-location on towers and more deployment, which we are very happy to have. So we have a couple of, again, items that are on the record that we think would be helpful. We would love the FCC to address concealment elements, which was in the 5G upgrade order and remanded by the courts. And I think that just needs some clarification, and we can move forward with that. We have an issue with time-limited CUPs, conditional use permits. I'm trying to get all my acronyms straight.
Please do.
Which may not necessarily align with the 6409A requirements, so we'd like some clarity there. And then the other mentions, well, more than mentions in the item, which are like shot clocks, proportionate fees. These are all issues that I think the FCC can address and will certainly expedite further deployment.
And Melanie?
Yeah, so we have some goals for the FCC, and I'll just sort of go through them. I think first would be our approach to siting. So our primary goal is to work with local governments on the placement of our equipment to make sure that our facilities are meeting their needs and expectations. We recognize local governments' legitimate interests in managing land use and community aesthetics, but there are some jurisdictions that have policies that make it really difficult or impossible to deploy. And so a balanced approach grounded in clear federal standards, predictable timelines, and limited documentation requirements will help to preserve local input while also ensuring that 5G and 6G deployments proceed at the speed that the public will demand. We should promote efficient use of existing infrastructure, right? So the statute is so important here because it really does recognize that the review process for adding to an already existing site should be faster and easier than the process for a wholly new site, which makes perfect sense. And leveraging current infrastructure supports cost-effective expansion, it enhances coverage, and it'll enable advanced edge computing services, all while reducing the need for new tower builds. I agree with Jennifer that the commission should define concealment element and what it means to defeat the concealment as those terms are used in the rules. The FCC should clarify that any siting approval condition, including any aesthetic-related conditions or other conditions that are designed to address the visual impact of a facility, cannot be used to prevent modifications that are specifically allowed under the rules. The 2020 declaratory ruling included several subjective criteria that may actually be difficult to implement in practice. So, we would encourage the commission to consider opportunities to adopt some more objective standards to determine what is required of 6409 applicants and when an application qualifies or doesn't as an EFR. And finally, we think that the commission should clarify that a jurisdiction may not seek to impose new conditions as part of a permit renewal process. The local government's efforts to impose new conditions kind of defeat the intended purpose of Section 6409 and should be considered an effective denial that actually violates the statute. And we also think the FCC should strengthen deemed granted remedies for jurisdictions that fail to act within the 60-day timeframe, because this will help to ensure timely decisions and accountability.
I love those comments, Beth.
There you go.
Absolutely, yes, and they seem to be very common sense reforms. Now, I might be a little biased, but how do we help generate broad support for these proposals? Do any of you have thoughts on that? Want to jump in?
Well, I think it's great that Melanie said, and I agree, that we try to work with local governments, which we do. I mean, we don't want this to be a bad experience. We don't want it to be combative. We want to work and meet the needs of the community. So hopefully we can continue to do that, though I know that this proceeding may not all be framed in a way that is supportive. We really mean to be.
That's great to hear. So I want to turn to another topic that seems to generate both interest and consensus, and that is database reforms. So the Build America agenda also highlights the important role that government databases can play in enabling or hindering government efficiency. Now, fortunately, Chairman Carr has indicated that the FCC will take a look at potential improvements to its licensing and other databases, which frankly could use some sprucing up. So I'd love to hear from you all about the benefits of cleaning up the FCC's databases. Does it help provide more efficient use of business and agency resources and help enhance your ability to engage with the commission. Why don't we go in reverse order this time? I'll start with
Fun.
Melanie.
I think it might be a more interesting question to ask if anyone can think of any downsides to FCC databases.
Sure.
But of course, modern, reliable FCC databases will help to automate some of the routine tasks, and that will speed up application processing, therefore, saving time for both industry and the agency. It'll ultimately accelerate deployment if we can get faster approvals on licensing and leases. It'll cut costs, which, supports deregulation. We will improve accuracy and transparency, hopefully reduce some outages. So I think there's nothing but good things that can come from updating some of the databases.
Yeah, agreed. We use the antenna structure registration system, and if it goes down, I understand on occasion it goes down, it glitches, it disappears, and so that certainly slows down our process and deployment, which is not great. We totally support modernizing information technology at the FCC, which I think there's an executive order encouraging that throughout the government. So totally in line. We hope that the FCC makes a deliberate effort to do it. It can go wrong. So, and we've seen that with other agencies. So, and it's probably easier said than done too. So we fully support it and understand that the FCC, it's not going to be easy, but it would certainly help with deployment.
I'll borrow a comment from the previous panelist who said he would double click on that. So I'll double click on all that. But when we were talking about the questions and prepping for the panel, I guess the word that came to my mind when we talked about this was frictionless.
Yes.
That having improved databases makes our interactions frictionless, which is good for both parties. And I would add, maybe there's an opportunity here for industry to be helpful in terms of the improvements that could be made since we are interacting with the commission that way. And when I thought about that, what came to my mind was when we started, I think it's about 3 years ago now, having to do the broadband data reporting. And that first round of reports that was brutal. And it's gotten better and better over time. And I think part of that was there was engagement between FCC staff and staff at carriers who we're trying our best to get the data to them, and there were improvements made along the way, and we've gotten to a much better place. So I think perhaps if we have the opportunity to engage and give feedback, and however that looks, systems aren't easy, but there may be some opportunity there for us to be helpful along the way.
Yeah.
Is that your comment?
Yes.
Double click on that.
There's so much time and energy and effort that's used to navigate these databases that can be saved if they were more efficient, that they even just use some of the regular tools that we all play with every day. I don't know, like AI, I don't know, maybe a chat feature, something that is just a little more modern than going page by page by page. Can we upload a spreadsheet that will read on the other side of all the data that you need? So we are very excited. And as Melanie said, there is no downside to updating these databases. I think the FCC will find it even more efficient for them too. And the industry is here, and for sure we are here to support it.
Absolutely. I've heard from people that have had to log on in the wee hours of the morning to access these databases. So while it's a bit of a wonky topic, it's certainly an important one that could improve lives for both industry as well as other stakeholders in the commission staff. So we are running short on time and wanted to focus on a forward-looking question to close us out today. The FCC, you all are taking great steps to enact some reforms that will help unleash innovation and deployment. But how can we help the FCC build a case for lasting reforms? How are your companies thinking about potential changes in the future, new regulations? How do we help future-proof the good work that the Commission and you all are doing right now? Why don't we go ahead and go down the line?
Yeah, I think, this has been a great panel. We've talked about all the positive benefits to looking at regulations that hinder innovation and deployment. We definitely do not want a back to future moment for us. So, you know, a strong legal footing, intention, and care, we think will solidify the work that the FCC is doing now.
I would agree with those comments about what we need in order to get to durable deregulation, but I think, you know, we have to anticipate that there will be additional regulatory change coming. Don't know what it is, but it's like any other change that we face as a business. You know, the markets change, consumer needs change, technology changes, market conditions change, and so we just have to be, as we are in those ways, nimble to deal with regulatory change and adapt as it comes.
Agree. Given the changes in the legal landscape, we have, in the last Congress, supported the American Broadband Deployment Act, which codifies some of the FCC rules. So we're looking to Congress to lock these rules in place. The last Congress, the legislation was introduced. It was not voted. We would love to see it introduced again, and maybe Congress will come back and vote on it. But we think that that's probably the strongest way to support future-proofing all of this. It was before Chevron, the overturning of Chevron deference, it was a nice to have, but I think now some of this is gonna be a need to have.
Yeah, and I'll just, you know, to varying degrees, regulations evolve with every administration. And so, like, of course, our business works to adapt as quickly as possible when those happen. But with that said, we really appreciate the efforts of Chairman Carr and this commission to modernize these regulations. And we're really hopeful that future administrations will recognize how impactful this has been and continue to support the streamlined pro-deployment reforms that will support accelerating deployments and getting Americans connected.
Well, it's been incredible to hear from you all today. Anisa, you said that Christmas came in April. For me, Christmas has come in October, being able to be joined by such an expert group of panelists talking about efforts that the commission, that stakeholders can undertake across the board to help implement the Build America agenda on all fronts, whether that's infrastructure reforms, updating, modernizing, and removing unnecessary regulations, even addressing things as wonky but impactful as database reforms. So thank you so much. As I said at the beginning, Chairman Carr announced that it is time to build. And as we heard from CTIA's president and CEO earlier today, we need to make sure that we do that in a way that is smart, efficient, and fast. The ideas that you put forward will certainly help us do that. So thank you so much for your time today.
Yes.
And with that, we have come to the end of day one of the Everything Policy program. But wait, there's more. We are ready to welcome you back here tomorrow for day two, where we have another couple of panels that will talk about the future of wireless, secure wireless networks, and we'll also hear some recorded remarks from Commissioners Trustee and Gomez. So hope to see you all back here tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great evening.